Later on today, Vice President JD Vance will lead up a group of lawmakers to East Palestine, Ohio, exactly 2 years after a toxic train derailment scarred that town for years and really generations to come, if you think about it. The vice president will be joined by Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, Republican Senators Moreno and Jon Husted, and new EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. NewsNation's Rich McHugh has been covering this since the beginning. He is back in East Palestine this morning. Rich, you have spent so much time there. How do you think recovery is going 2 years later?
Hey, good morning, Markie. Well, I think it's a mixed bag here. You talk to some residents, they're moving forward, and they want to put this all behind them. But many residents that we speak to are really struggling, suffering with health issues. They're afraid to go back in their homes. So it's really split, as one resident just told me. It's been 2 years since this derailment, just over my shoulder, and then officials decided to burn 116 gallons of toxic vinyl chloride that really forever changed this town. Vinyl chloride is still being detected here. Residents have been sick with rashes, upper respiratory issues. There's been no public health emergency declared. There's no long-term health monitoring plan. Just a few minutes ago, I spoke with resident Lori O'Connell. She is suffering. Her husband has a newly acquired aggressive breast cancer. She says they were completely healthy before. I asked, do you have a message for Vice President Vance, who has been here as the Ohio Senator before? Here's what she had to say.
He needs to remember when he came here before he was Vice President and realize that these people still need help. We still need health care monitoring. There are people who still want to be removed from this area, and they can't do it. They can't do it. Their hands are tied.
Now, independent testing found dioxins, which are incredibly toxic compounds in her home and in her soil. And she says she's one of those who's afraid to actually be in her home. She says she feels it's making her sick. Markie.
And Rich, we do know that JD Vance will be there today. In fact, his hometown is just a few hours southwest of East Palestine. What do you think we'll hear from the vice president today when he lands?
Well, I'm hearing rumblings that there might be something to do with a disaster declaration or health care. That would be tremendous. I know he's spoken about that in the past. In fact, he was here exactly 1 year ago. I had the chance to actually ask him that direction. What should President Biden do, or should he sign this declaration? Why he hasn't? Take a listen. Senator, President Biden has a disaster declaration basically sitting on his desk. If he signed that with the stroke of a pen, he could bring federal help to this community. Why do you think President Biden will not sign that?
I don't know. I think it's shameful that he hasn't signed it. I think the minute that Mike DeWine, the governor of the state, asked for it, the president should have responded to it. And what's interesting now is, you talk to community leaders who will say a disaster declaration is not actually necessarily what they want now, right? So it's kind of fascinating here. It would have been much, much more helpful when the governor initially made the request. I think at this point it's way too little, way too late, which is like what so much of the Biden administration has done.
Now, residents here in East Palestine, they're hoping that he will announce some sort of disaster declaration, federal disaster declaration, and more importantly, long-term health monitoring plan, which is so badly needed here. Markie.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.